The ancient dragon Zephyros lay dying beneath the crimson sky of Kepler 442b. His massive form sprawled across the crystalline plains that had once trembled at his approach. For 3,000 years, he had been the apex predator of this world, a creature of legend whose very breath could melt mountains and whose wings could blot out the twin suns. Now his scales had dulled to the color of ash, and each labored breath sent wisps of fading ember from his nostrils. The wound in his chest was not from any earthly weapon. The Void Hunters had finally found him, those mechanical monstrosities from the dark spaces between galaxies. Their energy lances had pierced his hide and poisoned his life force with quantum decay. He had destroyed their ship, yes, but at a cost that even his ancient body could not bear. The void poison spread through his veins like liquid darkness, eating away at the very essence that had made him immortal. Zephyros had ruled this world when it was young. When the first primitive tribes had cowered in caves and offered him tribute, he had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen the coming of the starfarers from distant worlds who tried to colonize his domain. Most he had driven away with fire and fury. A few he had allowed to stay, finding their struggles amusing. But through all the ages, he had remained alone, the last of his kind, carrying the weight of a dead species on his shoulders. The dragon's golden eyes, once bright as newborn stars, now flickered like dying candles. He could feel his consciousness beginning to fragment, memories of ancient battles and forgotten loves slipping away like sand through his claws. Soon there would be nothing left but silence and the slow decay of his massive corpse beneath alien suns. In his final moments, Zephyros felt something he had not experienced in millennia. Regret, not for the lives he had taken or the civilizations he had humbled, but for the connections he had never made. In his pride and power, he had isolated himself from all other life. He would die as he had lived for so long, utterly alone. The twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the crystal plains. Somewhere in the distance, a transport ship's engines hummed as it descended through the atmosphere. Zephyros paid it no mind. Scavengers and explorers came often to this world, drawn by rumors of his treasure hoards. Let them come. Soon there would be nothing left to guard, nothing left to fear. The last dragon of the cosmos would finally find the peace that had eluded him for 3,000 years. His breathing grew more shallow with each passing moment. The void poison had reached his heart, and even his legendary constitution could not fight it any longer. Zephyros closed his eyes and prepared to join his fallen kin in whatever realm awaited dragons beyond death. The age of fire and scale was ending, and with it one of the universe's oldest mysteries would be solved. Dragons, it seemed, could indeed die. Yet as darkness began to claim him, the dragon's enhanced hearing caught something unexpected. The sound of small footsteps approaching across the crystal ground. Not the heavy boots of an armored explorer or the mechanical whirring of a survey drone, but the light, quick steps of something small and organic. His eyes remained closed, but his other senses tracked the approaching presence. Whatever it was showed no fear, no hesitation as it drew near to his massive form. Zephyros had no strength left to raise his head or open his eyes. The footsteps stopped just beside his great snout, and he felt the vibrations through the ground as something small settled down next to him. Then came a sound that pierced through his fading consciousness like a shaft of light through darkness. A young voice, speaking in the common tongue of the human colonies. "Hey there, big guy," the voice said, soft and filled with a compassion that the dragon had not heard in centuries. "Looks like you're having a rough time." The touch came without warning, a small warm hand placed gently against the scales of his snout. It should have been nothing, the contact of some insignificant creature against his dying form. But something extraordinary happened in that moment of connection. The void poison recoiled from the point of contact as if burned, and for the first time in days, Zephyros felt no pain. His eyes snapped open to find a human child kneeling beside his head, one small hand resting fearlessly against his scales. The boy could not have been more than 10 standard years old, with unruly brown hair and eyes the color of Earth's lost oceans. He wore the simple clothes of a colony child, and his face showed no trace of the terror that Zephyros's appearance usually inspired. "There you are," the boy said with a smile that seemed to hold the warmth of 1,000 suns. "I'm Marcus. Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." Zephyros stared at the human child in bewilderment, his ancient mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. The boy's touch continued to hold back the void poison, creating a small bubble of relief around the point of contact. But more than that, There was something in the child's presence that the dragon had never encountered before. A pure, unconditional acceptance that asked for nothing and offered everything. "You're scared," Marcus said, his small hand moving gently along the dragon's snout. "I can feel it. But you don't have to be scared anymore. My mom says that being scared just means you care about something." The dragon tried to speak, but only a weak rumble emerged from his throat. The child seemed to understand anyway, nodding as if they were having a perfectly normal conversation. Marcus pulled a small water container from his belt and carefully poured some of the liquid onto his hands before placing them back on Zephyros's scales, the waters from the healing springs near our colony, the boy explained. Mom brought some when she heard about the big creature that fell from the sky. She thought maybe you might need help. He paused, studying the dragon's massive golden eye. "You're not really bad, are you? The grown-ups say all big creatures are dangerous, but I think they're just scared because you're different." Zephyros felt something stir within his chest. Not the cold spread of void poison, but something warm and long forgotten. The child's words carried a weight that had nothing to do with authority or power, and everything to do with simple truth. In 3,000 years, no being had looked at him and seen past the legend to the creature beneath. Marcus continued his gentle ministrations, humming a soft tune as he worked. The melody was unfamiliar to the dragon, but it carried the same quality as the boy's presence: innocent, hopeful, and utterly fearless. Where the child's hands touched, the dull scales began to show hints of their former luster, and the pain that had been Zephyros's constant companion began to fade. "I'm not supposed to be here," Marcus admitted with the casual honesty of childhood. "Mom and Dad are back at the ship arguing with the colony council about whether to try to help you or just leave you alone. But I couldn't just wait while you were hurting." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I've always been able to feel when things are in pain. Mom says it's because I have a big heart, but Dad worries it'll get me in trouble someday." The dragon managed to focus enough to truly look at the child. There was indeed something special about this human, something that went beyond his unusual lack of fear. Zephyros could sense it now, a natural empathy so strong it seemed to resonate with the life force itself. The boy was not just touching his scales, he was somehow touching the very essence of what made the dragon alive. "They say you're the last one," Marcus continued, his young face serious. "The last dragon in the whole universe. That must be really lonely." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't have any brothers or sisters, so I know what lonely feels like. But you've been alone for so much longer than me." For the first time in millennia, Zephyros felt moisture gather in his own eyes. This child, this impossibly brave and compassionate human child, was crying for him, not from fear or awe, but from genuine sorrow for his suffering. The dragon's throat worked, and finally he managed to speak, his voice a whisper like distant thunder. "Why?" he rasped, the word carrying the weight of 3,000 years of isolation. Marcus smiled through his tears, understanding the question perfectly. "Because everyone deserves to have someone who cares about them. And because I think you've been carrying too much sadness for too long." His small hands pressed more firmly against the dragon's scales. "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore." The void poison writhed and twisted within Zephyros's body, as if it were being burned away by some force it could not comprehend. The dragon realized with growing amazement that the child was not just holding back the toxin, he was somehow transforming it, changing its very nature through nothing more than compassion and contact. In the distance, voices called out Marcus's name. The boy's head turned toward the sound, and Zephyros felt a moment of panic at the thought of losing this unexpected connection. But Marcus looked back at him with calm determination. "Don't worry," the child said. "I'm not going anywhere. Mom and Dad are probably just worried, but once they see that you're not dangerous, they'll understand." He grinned with the boundless optimism of youth. "Besides, I think you and I are going to be friends, and friends don't abandon each other." The word friends hit Zephyros like a physical blow. In all his long existence, he had never had a friend. He had had subjects, enemies, challengers, and cowering supplicants, but never simply a friend. The concept was so foreign to his experience that he almost could not process it. As the voices grew closer, Marcus squeezed his eyes shut in concentration, his hands growing warmer against the dragon's scales. "I'm going to try something," he said. "Hold still and trust me, okay?" Marcus closed his eyes and pressed both palms firmly against Zephyros's snout, his young face scrunched in concentration. The dragon felt a strange tingling sensation begin to spread from the points of contact. Different from the simple pain relief the boy had provided before, this was something deeper, more fundamental, as if the child was reaching into the very core of his being and rekindling fires that had burned low for centuries. The void poison, which had been slowly consuming Zephyros from within, suddenly recoiled as if faced with its antithesis. Where the dark energy had spread like liquid shadow through his veins, now waves of pure life force began to flow, carrying with them not just healing, but something far more precious: hope. The dragon's dulled scales began to brighten, their edges catching the fading light of the twin suns and reflecting it back in brilliant flashes of gold and crimson. "I can see it," Marcus whispered, his eyes still closed but his voice filled with wonder. "The hurt inside you. It's not just from the fight, is it? It's older, deeper. You've been carrying it for so long that you forgot what it felt like to be whole." Zephyros trembled as forgotten memories began to surface, not the bitter recollections of loss and isolation that had haunted him for millennia, but older, warmer memories from before the loneliness had consumed him. He remembered the joy of flight when the universe was young, the satisfaction of protecting the first life to emerge on this world, the simple pleasure of basking in sunlight on a peaceful day. The approaching voices grew louder, and soon two figures emerged from behind a crystal formation. Marcus's parents, both wearing the practical clothing of colonists, stopped dead in their tracks at the sight of their son, calmly touching the legendary dragon of Kepler 442b. The woman, clearly Marcus's mother with her gentle features and worry-lined face, raised a hand to her mouth in shock. The man, presumably his father, reached instinctively for the plasma rifle at his side before the peaceful scene registered in his mind. "Marcus," his mother called, her voice carefully controlled despite her obvious fear. "Step away from it slowly. Don't make any sudden movements." The boy opened his eyes and looked back at his parents with the patient expression of a child who knew adults didn't always understand important things. "It's okay, Mom. His name is Zephyros and he's not dangerous. He's just hurt and lonely." "Son," his father said, his hand still hovering near his weapon, "that thing could incinerate you with a breath. We need to get you away from there right now." Zephyros felt a familiar surge of anger at the man's words and tone, but before he could react, Marcus's small hand patted his snout reassuringly. "See?" the boy said to his parents. "He's not going to hurt anyone. He's actually really gentle once you get to know him." The dragon stared at the child in amazement. In a few short minutes, this human boy had done something that 3,000 years of experience had not. He had seen past the legend and the fear to recognize the individual beneath. More than that, he had somehow begun to heal wounds that Zephyros had thought were permanent parts of his existence. "The void poison," the dragon managed to say, his voice growing stronger with each word. "It is leaving me." "How is this possible?" Marcus shrugged with the casual acceptance of childhood magic. "I don't know exactly how it works. I just know that when I touch someone who's hurting, sometimes I can help make it better. Mom says it's like having a really strong healing factor, but for other people instead of myself." His mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, according to the nameplate on her medical bag, took a cautious step forward. Her scientific curiosity was clearly warring with her maternal instincts. "Marcus, what you're describing sounds like empathic healing, but that's supposed to be impossible. The energy requirements alone would be—" "Mom," Marcus interrupted gently, "sometimes impossible things happen anyway, and sometimes they happen because they need to." Zephyros felt strength returning to his limbs as the child's healing continued. The massive wound in his chest inflicted by the Void Hunter's energy lances began to close. More importantly, the spiritual wounds that had festered for millennia were also beginning to heal. For the first time in centuries, the dragon felt something other than resignation about his existence. "The boy speaks truth," Zephyros said, turning his great head to address the adults. "I mean no harm to you or yours. Indeed, I find myself in your debt. Your child has given me something I thought lost forever." Dr. Chen approached slowly, her medical training overcoming her fear as she observed the dragon's improving condition. "The quantum signatures are stabilizing," she murmured, checking readings on a small scanner. "Whatever Marcus is doing, it's actually working. The void energy is being neutralized at the molecular level. Marcus's father, Tom, finally let his hand fall away from his weapon. I don't understand any of this, he admitted, but I can see that the dragon isn't threatening Marcus. And if Sarah says the readings are improving, he trailed off, shaking his head in bewilderment. Understanding is not always necessary, Zephyros said, his voice now carrying some of its ancient power and dignity. Sometimes acceptance is enough. Your son has shown me more kindness in these few moments than I have received in 3 millennia. Such a gift deserves recognition. The dragon began to shift his position, muscles that had been paralyzed by void poison responding once again to his will. Marcus stepped back to give him room but kept one hand in contact with his scales. Slowly, majestically, Zephyros raised his great head to its full height, his eyes blazing with renewed life. I am Zephyros, he declared, his voice carrying across the crystal plains like rolling thunder. Last of the star dragons, guardian of this world, and as of this moment, friend and protector of Marcus Chen and all he holds dear. The crystal plains echoed with the dragon's declaration, and for a moment the very air seemed to shimmer with ancient power. Zephyros stretched his wings for the first time in days, testing muscles that had been locked in rigor mortis. The membrane between his wing bones, once gray and lifeless, now glowed with inner fire, casting dancing shadows across the ground. Marcus clapped his hands together in delight, completely unafraid of the massive creature rising before him. See, I told you he was nice, he said to his parents, who were still trying to process what they had witnessed. And look how pretty his wings are when the light shines through them. Dr. Chen stepped closer, her scientific mind racing to document this unprecedented event. The cellular regeneration rate is extraordinary, she murmured, running her scanner over the dragon's healing wounds. The void energy isn't just being neutralized, it's being converted into pure life force. Marcus, how long have you been able to do this? The boy shrugged, his attention still focused on Zephyros as the dragon flexed his claws and tested his restored mobility. Always, I guess. I helped Mrs. Patterson's cat when it got sick last month, and I fixed the broken wing on that bird I found in the garden. But this is the first time I've tried it on someone so big. Zephyros lowered his great head until he was eye level with the child, his golden gaze intense, but gentle. Marcus of the clan Chen, he said formally, you have done more than heal my body. You have reminded me of what I once was before the darkness and isolation claimed me. I offer you a gift in return, the friendship of the last star dragon, and all the protection that such a bond entails. Tom stepped forward, his protective instincts still on high alert, despite the peaceful scene. What exactly does that mean? What kind of protection are we talking about? The dragon's eyes shifted to the man, and there was a hint of his ancient majesty in his gaze. It means, Thomas Chen, that your son is now under the guardianship of one who has seen the birth and death of civilizations. No harm will come to him while I draw breath, and any who threaten him will face the fury of dragon fire. Marcus reached up to pat the dragon's snout again, his small hand barely spanning one of the massive scales. That's really nice of you, Zephyros, but I don't think I need that much protection. Mom and Dad do a pretty good job taking care of me. Nevertheless, Zephyros rumbled, a sound like distant thunder mixed with contentment. The bond has been forged. In saving my life, you have bound our fates together. Where you go, my protection follows. Dr. Chen was still taking readings, her eyes wide with amazement. The energy patterns are stabilizing in a configuration I've never seen before. It's as if your life forces are becoming synchronized. She looked up at the dragon with academic curiosity overriding her fear. How is this possible? What is a star dragon exactly? Zephyros settled into a more comfortable position, his massive form creating a windbreak around the small family. We were among the first sentient beings to emerge when the universe was young, he explained, his voice taking on the cadence of ancient storytelling. Born in the hearts of dying stars, we carried the cosmic fires within us. We were guardians and protectors, maintaining the balance between creation and destruction. What happened to the others? Marcus asked, his young face serious as he sensed the weight of old sorrows. Time, Zephyros replied simply. The universe grew larger and colder. Our kind found it difficult to reproduce in the new cosmic conditions. One by one, we faded, choosing to sleep the eternal sleep rather than face the growing emptiness. His eyes focused on Marcus with something approaching wonder. I thought I was ready to join them, until you showed me that even in this strange new universe, there are still those capable of the kind of pure compassion that birthed the first stars. Tom was checking his communicator, frowning at the messages appearing on its screen. Sarah, we've got a problem. The Colony Council is demanding an immediate report on the dragon situation, and there are 3 ships requesting permission to enter orbit. Xenobiologists from the Galactic Research Institute want to study a living dragon. The air around Zephyros began to shimmer with heat as his protective instincts flared. Let them come, he growled, smoke beginning to curl from his nostrils. They will find that this dragon is not so easily studied. Marcus placed his hand on the dragon's snout again, and immediately the heat dissipated. It's okay, he said calmly. We don't have to fight anybody. Maybe they just want to learn about you like how I wanted to learn about you. The boy is wise, Dr. Chen observed, though her tone was worried. But Marcus, these aren't children driven by curiosity. These are researchers who see a unique specimen. They won't be satisfied with just observing. Zephyros lifted his head, his ancient mind already calculating possibilities and threats. Then perhaps it is time for the universe to remember why dragons were once feared and respected. I will not allow myself to become some laboratory curiosity, nor will I permit any harm to come to those under my protection. Marcus tugged on one of the dragon's lower scales to get his attention. What if we showed them that you're not just a specimen? What if we showed them that you're a person just like them? The dragon stared at the child for a long moment, then threw back his head and laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with the roar of a bonfire. A person just like them, he repeated, tasting the strange concept. In 3,000 years, no one has ever suggested that I might be a person, rather than a force of nature or a living weapon. Well, you are, Marcus said with the absolute certainty of childhood. You have thoughts and feelings, and you can choose to be nice or mean, just like anyone else. That makes you a person in my book. Dr. Chen's communicator chimed with an urgent message. The research ships are entering the outer atmosphere, she reported. We need to make a decision about how to handle this. Do we run? Do we hide? Do we fight? Zephyros rose to his full height, his wings spreading wide enough to cast the Chen family in shadow. But instead of the menacing display they might have expected, his posture was protective, sheltering. We do none of those things, he declared. We meet them as equals, a dragon and his human friends ready to negotiate rather than submit. Marcus grinned up at his enormous protector. I like that plan. But first, can I ask you something?
Anything, young friend. Can you teach me how to fly?
Zephyros stared at Marcus for a moment, then chuckled, a sound like warm coals settling in a fireplace. Humans cannot fly on their own, young one. Your species lacks both wings and the internal fire necessary for aerial locomotion. Marcus grinned with the boundless optimism that had already accomplished the impossible. I know I can't fly by myself, but I thought maybe you could take me with you. You know, like riding on your back? The suggestion hit the dragon like a physical blow. In all his millennia of existence, no being had ever ridden upon his back. Dragons did not serve as mounts. They were sovereign creatures, bowing to no one and carrying no one. The very idea should have been insulting, should have triggered his ancient pride and fury. Instead, Zephyros found himself seriously considering it. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her maternal instincts in full alarm. Absolutely not. Marcus, that's far too dangerous. You could fall or... Mom, Marcus interrupted gently. I trust him, and besides, he won't let me fall. Will you, Zephyros? The dragon met the child's trusting gaze and felt something shift in his ancient heart. This boy had given him life when he was ready to die, had offered friendship when he had known only isolation. If Marcus wanted to fly, then by all the stars in the cosmos he would fly. No, Zephyros said firmly, addressing both Marcus and his worried parents. I will not let you fall. But if we are to do this, we must do it properly. He lowered himself until his back was accessible, positioning himself carefully. Climb up behind my shoulders where the neck meets the torso. Hold tight to the ridge scales there. They are designed to provide grip. Tom grabbed his wife's arm as she started to protest again. Sarah, look at them. Look at how the dragon is positioning himself, how careful he's being. This isn't recklessness, this is trust. Marcus scrambled up the dragon's side with the fearless agility of childhood, settling into position just as Zephyros had instructed. The ridge scales provided perfect handholds, and the dragon's warmth seeped through his clothes like a living heating system. Are you ready? Zephyros asked, craning his neck to look back at his passenger. "More than ready," Marcus replied, his excitement palpable. The dragon's powerful legs coiled beneath him, and with a motion that combined grace and raw power, he launched himself into the air. His wings caught the wind with a sound like thunder, and suddenly they were rising, leaving the crystal plains far below. Marcus let out a whoop of pure joy that echoed across the sky. The sensation of flight was everything he had imagined and more. The wind in his hair, the ground falling away beneath them, the incredible strength of the creature carrying him safely through the clouds. Zephyros's flight was smooth and controlled, each wing beat calculated to provide maximum comfort for his passenger. "This is amazing," Marcus called out, his voice carried back to the dragon's ears by the wind. "I can see our whole colony from up here. And look, there are the research ships coming down through the atmosphere." Indeed, 3 sleek vessels were descending through Kepler 442b's sky, their hulls gleaming in the light of the twin suns. They were clearly scientific vessels, bristling with scanning equipment and observation ports. Even from a distance, Zephyros could sense the excitement and anticipation of their crews. "They mean to cage me," the dragon said, his voice carrying easily to Marcus despite the wind, "to study me like some exotic specimen in their laboratories." Marcus leaned forward, speaking directly into one of Zephyros's ears. "Then we'll just have to show them that you're not something to be caged. You're someone to be respected." The lead research ship was now close enough for its external speakers to activate. An authoritative voice boomed across the sky. "Unidentified dragon, this is Dr. Kellerman of the Galactic Research Institute. Please descend immediately and submit to containment protocols. You are now property of the Institute under Regulation 247 of the Xenobiological Preservation Act." Zephyros's eyes blazed with ancient fury, and the air around him began to shimmer with heat. "Property?" he snarled, his voice carrying across the sky like rolling thunder. "I am Zephyros the Starborn, guardian of worlds, herald of the cosmic flame. I am property to no one." "Easy," Marcus said calmly, patting the dragon's neck. "Getting angry won't solve anything. Let's try talking to them first." The boy's touch had its usual calming effect, and Zephyros found his rage settling into cold determination. "Very well. But if they persist in treating me as a specimen rather than a sentient being, they will learn why dragons were once the terror of the spaceways." Marcus cupped his hands around his mouth and called out to the research ships. "Dr. Kellerman, this is Marcus Chen. Zephyros isn't just a specimen, he's my friend. And friends don't capture friends." The lead ship wavered in its flight path, clearly caught off guard by the child's voice coming from the dragon's back. After a moment, Dr. Kellerman's voice returned, somewhat less authoritative than before. "Child, you are in extreme danger. That creature is a predator of incredible power. You need to get away from it immediately." "No, I don't," Marcus called back cheerfully. "Zephyros is really nice once you get to know him. He saved me from falling earlier, and now he's teaching me how to fly." To demonstrate his point, Zephyros performed a gentle barrel roll, his movements so smooth and controlled that Marcus laughed with delight rather than fear. The display of aerial mastery was also a clear message to the research ships. This dragon was in complete control of the situation. Dr. Kellerman's voice returned, now tinged with confusion and scientific curiosity. "This is unprecedented. Dragons are supposed to be solitary, aggressive creatures. The xenobiology texts clearly state—" "Maybe your texts are wrong," Marcus interrupted. "Maybe dragons are just lonely and need friends like everyone else." Below them, the crystal plains stretched out in all directions, catching and reflecting the light of the twin suns in brilliant displays of color. Zephyros banked gently, showing Marcus the full scope of the world they shared. From this height, the human colony looked like a small cluster of buildings nestled against a mountain range, while the dragon's ancient lair was visible as a dark opening in the cliffs. "Your parents are signaling from the ground," Zephyros observed, his keen eyes spotting the Chen family far below. "Perhaps we should return and continue this conversation on more equal terms." Marcus nodded, though he was clearly reluctant for the flight to end. "This was the best thing ever," he said as they began their descent. "Thank you for trusting me enough to take me flying." The dragon's response was quiet but heartfelt. "Thank you, Marcus Chen, for trusting me enough to ask." Zephyros landed with practiced grace on the crystal plains, his claws finding purchase on the smooth surface without leaving so much as a scratch. Marcus slid down from the dragon's back with a huge grin, immediately running to his parents to share his excitement about the flight. The research ships circled overhead like mechanical vultures, their sensors undoubtedly recording every detail of the unprecedented scene below. Dr. Chen embraced her son tightly, relief and wonder warring in her expression. "Marcus, you can't just go flying off with a dragon without warning us," she scolded, though her heart wasn't really in it. "We didn't know if you were safe or if we'd ever see you again." "But I was safe," Marcus protested, looking back at Zephyros with obvious affection. "Zephyros would never let anything happen to me." "Right," the dragon nodded solemnly. "The child speaks truth. While he is under my protection, no harm shall befall him." His golden eyes tracked the movement of the ships above. The same cannot be said for those who would treat him or me as subjects for experimentation. The lead research vessel finally descended to hover just above the ground, its engines kicking up swirls of crystal dust. A hatch opened and Dr. Kellerman emerged. A tall, thin man with graying hair and the intense gaze of someone accustomed to reducing complex phenomena to data points. He was followed by several other researchers and a security team in powered armor. "This is highly irregular," Dr. Kellerman announced as he approached, a portable scanning device in his hands. "Dragons are classified as Category Alpha xenobiological entities. There are protocols that must be followed, containment procedures that ensure public safety." Zephyros drew himself up to his full height, his presence suddenly filling the space around them with an almost tangible sense of ancient power. "I am not a Category Alpha anything," he said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "I am Zephyros, and I am tired of being classified, catalogued, and dismissed by beings who measure wisdom in years rather than eons." Marcus stepped between the dragon and the researchers, his small form dwarfed by both groups but somehow commanding attention anyway. "Dr. Kellerman, sir, could you please put away the scanner thingy? Zephyros doesn't like being studied without permission, and I think it's kind of rude anyway." The scientist blinked, clearly unused to having his methods questioned by a child. "Young man, this is important scientific work. The opportunity to study a living dragon is a privilege, not a right," Tom interrupted, stepping up beside his son. "And privileges have to be earned through respect, not demanded through regulations." Dr. Chen moved to flank Marcus on the other side, her medical credentials giving her words additional weight. "Dr. Kellerman, I've been taking readings on the dragon's condition since my son first made contact. The physiological processes I've observed are beyond our current understanding of xenobiology. If you want to learn from Zephyros, you need to approach this as a collaboration, not a capture." Dr. Kellerman's expression shifted from authoritative to intrigued. "You've been conducting studies? What have you observed?" Before Dr. Chen could answer, Zephyros spoke again, his tone carrying a hint of sardonic amusement. "Perhaps you should ask me directly, Dr. Kellerman. I am, after all, capable of speech and reasoning. Or do your protocols require that you discuss me as if I were not present?" The researcher's face flushed slightly, and he had the grace to look embarrassed. "You're right, of course. I apologize. It's just that the opportunity to encounter a dragon is so unprecedented that I'm afraid my scientific excitement got the better of my manners." Marcus beamed at this admission. "See? You can be friends with anyone if you just remember to be polite." He turned to Zephyros. "Dr. Kellerman studies really interesting stuff. Maybe you could tell him about what it was like when the universe was young. I bet he'd love to hear those stories." The dragon considered this, his ancient mind weighing possibilities. Finally, he lowered himself until he was closer to the human's eye level, a gesture that clearly startled the research team. "Very well. I am willing to share knowledge with those who approach as equals rather than captors, but I have conditions." Dr. Kellerman eagerly pulled out a recording device. "Of course. What conditions?" "First," Zephyros said, "any information I provide is given freely and may not be used without my consent. Second, this world remains my domain, and I will not tolerate any attempts to establish research stations or permanent installations without my approval. Third," his gaze shifted to Marcus, "the boy and his family are under my protection, and any threat to them will be met with the full fury of dragonfire." The researcher nodded rapidly, clearly overwhelmed by the prospect of gaining voluntary cooperation from a creature of legend. "Those terms are more than acceptable. In fact, they're preferable to our standard protocols. A willing subject, a willing participant, always provides better data than a captive one. Marcus clapped his hands together in delight.
This is going to be great.
Zephyros can tell you about the old times, and you can tell him about all the new scientific stuff that's happened since he's been alone. It's like a knowledge exchange. One of the other researchers, a younger woman with bright blue hair, stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, if I may ask, how old are you exactly? The stellar formation patterns you mentioned suggest an age that should be impossible for any biological entity. Zephyros's eyes took on a distant look, as if he were seeing across vast stretches of time. I have seen 17 galactic rotations, witnessed the birth and death of 14 civilizations, and observed the formation of 3 planetary systems. In your terms, I am approximately 3,000 of your standard years old. The research team exchanged amazed glances, and Dr. Kellerman's hands shook slightly as he adjusted his recording equipment. 3,000 years of continuous consciousness. The historical knowledge you must possess. The scientific observations. The technological developments you've witnessed. Indeed, Zephyros agreed. And all of it I will share, provided our agreement is honored. But first, he turned his attention back to Marcus. I believe this young diplomat deserves another flight as a reward for facilitating this peaceful resolution. Marcus's face lit up like a miniature sun. Really, we can fly again? His parents exchanged looks, but the trust they had seen demonstrated made their decision easy. Dr. Chen smiled and nodded. Just be careful, sweetheart, and remember to say thank you. As Marcus scrambled back onto the dragon's back, Zephyros addressed the research team one final time. Remember, scientists of the Galactic Institute, you are guests in my domain now. Treat it and those I protect with respect, and you will find me a willing teacher. Betray that trust. He let the threat hang in the air, unfinished but unmistakable. With that, the dragon spread his wings and took to the sky once more, carrying his young friend toward the horizon. Below them, the crystal plains sparkled like scattered diamonds, and the future spread out before them full of possibilities neither had dared to imagine just hours before. 6 months had passed since that fateful day when a dying dragon met a human boy with an impossible gift. The crystal plains of Kepler 442b now hosted a small but bustling research station, built with Zephyros's approval and designed to blend harmoniously with the natural landscape. The dragon's ancient lair had been partially converted into a vast library and meeting hall, where beings from across the galaxy came to hear the living history that only Zephyros could provide. Marcus sat cross-legged on a smooth crystal outcropping, watching his friend demonstrate aerial maneuvers to a group of visiting pilots who had specifically requested to see impossible flight patterns performed by a creature that defied all known laws of aerodynamics. The boy had grown taller in the months since their first meeting, but his smile remained just as bright and his capacity for wonder just as boundless. Show them the spiral dive, Marcus called out, his voice carrying easily across the plains. That's my favorite. Zephyros responded with what could only be described as a grin, then folded his wings and dropped into a controlled spin that should have sent him crashing into the ground. Instead, at the last possible moment, he spread his wings and pulled out of the dive with impossible grace, coming to hover just above the crystal surface. The visiting pilots applauded enthusiastically, their instruments going wild, trying to analyze flight patterns that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Dr. Kellerman approached Marcus's perch, carrying a tablet full of notes and wearing the satisfied expression of a researcher whose wildest dreams had been exceeded. Remarkable as always, he said, settling down beside the boy. In 6 months, Zephyros has taught us more about stellar formation, early cosmic history, and exotic energy manipulation than we learned in the previous century. The Galactic Institute wants to establish him as the first non-human professor emeritus in their history. Marcus grinned at that. He'd like that. He's always been a teacher at heart, even when he didn't have anyone to teach. What about the other dragon sites? Any luck finding more of them? The researcher's expression grew more serious. We've located 17 other worlds with dragon lairs, but so far they all appear to be empty. Zephyros may truly be the last of his kind. He paused, studying the boy's face. How is he handling that knowledge? Better than before, Marcus replied thoughtfully. I think having people to talk to and share stories with helps. And he says that even if he's the last dragon, he's not really alone anymore because he has friends. The boy's expression grew mischievous. Plus, he's got this crazy idea about trying to find a way to create new dragons using science and starfire. Dr. Chen thinks he might actually be onto something. Dr. Kellerman nearly dropped his tablet. He's researching dragon reproduction? But the energy requirements would be astronomical and the stellar conditions needed. Yeah, that's what everyone keeps saying. Marcus interrupted with a laugh. But Zephyros is really old and really smart, and he's got access to the research station's computers now. Mom says his theoretical work is unprecedented and possibly revolutionary, which I think means really cool but also kind of scary. Zephyros landed nearby, his powerful wings creating small whirlwinds of crystal dust. The visiting pilots were still chattering excitedly about what they had witnessed, but the dragon's attention was focused entirely on Marcus. "Young friend," he said warmly, "are you ready for today's lesson?" Marcus jumped up eagerly. "Absolutely. Are we working on the healing techniques again?" Over the months, it had become clear that Marcus's empathic healing abilities were not just remarkable, but potentially revolutionary. Under Zephyros's patient tutelage, the boy had learned to extend his range, focus his power, and even store healing energy for later use. The dragon's ancient knowledge of life force manipulation had provided the theoretical framework that Marcus's natural talent needed to flourish. "Today," Zephyros announced, "we attempt something new. I want to see if you can share your healing gift with others." Dr. Kellerman looked up sharply. "Share it? You mean teach other people to heal the way Marcus does?" The dragon nodded slowly. The boy's power stems from empathy, compassion, and an unusual resonance with life force itself. While not everyone possesses his natural strength in these areas, I believe the techniques can be learned by those with sufficient motivation and training. Marcus clapped his hands together in excitement. "You mean other people could learn to help the way I do? That would be amazing. We could help so many more people." "The implications are staggering," Dr. Kellerman murmured, already making notes. "If empathic healing could be taught, it could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy." "But surely the power requirements are manageable," Zephyros interrupted, "when one understands the true nature of life force and its relationship to consciousness." Marcus does not create healing energy. He channels and focuses energy that already exists within all living beings. The key is learning to recognize and direct that energy constructively. As if to demonstrate, Marcus placed his hands on a dead crystal formation near his feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, a soft glow began to emanate from the point of contact. The crystal's dull surface began to clear, and tiny veins of light spread through its structure like a circulatory system coming to life. "It's not really alive," Marcus explained to the amazed onlookers. "But crystals can hold and channel energy, kind of like batteries. Zephyros taught me how to charge them up with healing energy so they can help people even when I'm not around." Dr. Kellerman was frantically scribbling notes. Crystalline energy storage matrices infused with biologically compatible healing frequencies. This could change everything. Portable healing stations, emergency medical supplies that never run out. The boy's gift extends far beyond simple healing, Zephyros added, pride evident in his voice. "He has shown me that compassion itself is a force as real and measurable as gravity or electromagnetism. In understanding this, I have begun to comprehend why the universe brought us together." Marcus looked up at his enormous friend with curiosity. "What do you mean?" The dragon's expression grew thoughtful, ancient eyes reflecting the light of the twin suns. "For 3,000 years I believed I was the last remnant of a dying age, a relic of cosmic forces that no longer held relevance. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps I was not meant to be an ending, but a bridge, a way for the wisdom of the old universe to connect with the compassion of the new one." Tom and Sarah Chen approached from the direction of the research station, both wearing the slightly dazed expressions that had become common among the station's personnel. They had adapted remarkably well to their new lives as the parents of the most famous child in the galaxy and the guardians of humanity's first Dragon Alliance. "Marcus," Sarah called out, "you've got a message from the Galactic Council. They want to know if you and Zephyros would be willing to help mediate a territorial dispute in the Andromeda sector. Apparently 2 civilizations have been fighting for decades, and they think a dragon and a human child might be exactly what's needed to broker peace." Marcus looked at Zephyros, who nodded solemnly. A worthy use of our abilities, the dragon agreed, and an opportunity to spread the lessons we have learned about the power of understanding and compassion. Plus, Marcus added with a grin, it'll be another adventure, and maybe we'll meet some new friends. As the boys scrambled up onto Zephyros's back for their daily flight, the dragon spread his wings wide, casting a protective shadow over the research station and all who dwelt there. The last dragon of the cosmos was no longer alone, and the human child who had saved him was growing into something unprecedented. A healer, a diplomat, and a bridge between species. Together, they rose into the sky of Kepler 442b, their bond a testament to the truth that had changed both their lives. Even in the vast loneliness of space, no one had to face the darkness alone, and sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to reach out and touch another soul with kindness. The age of dragons had not ended after all. It had simply evolved, taking on a new form that blazed with the combined light of ancient wisdom and innocent compassion, and in that light the future looked brighter than either of them had ever dared to hope.